Welcome to the second floor of the Duncan Student Center for the last Shamrock Sports of the semester. It also happens to be our first ever all-women's desk. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome back to the Duncan Student Center. I'm Caroline Pineda, joined by Chloe Stafford and Kelly Gorman. Well, we know where the Irish are headed. It's the Fiesta Bowl, not the college football playoff. Only one of the 4 games that needed to go Notre Dame's way went that way. Notre Dame would have needed 2 of those outcomes to go the correct way and only got that one. So they will be headed to the Fiesta Bowl, which isn't all bad. It means the Freeman era can start with a New Year's 6 win, and so much has happened since last week. We have a lot to unpack here, but we'll start with just initial reactions. A busy conference championship Saturday. Lots of things needed to go Notre Dame's way. That first one did. It looked like it was pretty promising there for a little bit, and then nothing else fell the way of the Irish. But what were your initial takeaways from conference championship Saturday? Kelly, we'll start with you.
I am not going to lie. I'm devastated. I saw Baylor win, and I just decided in my head that we were making it to playoffs. I was like, Georgia's going to beat Alabama. We're making it. And then it was just devastating to see that not happen, especially because I think Notre Dame, our team right now, could have taken on any team in the playoffs that's going to the playoffs right now. With our improvement and our momentum and support regarding Freeman, I really think we could have taken on any team in the playoffs. But if you did tell me in August that we'd finished number 5 in our technical rebuilding year and our only loss was to the only undefeated team in the FBS, I think I'd say I'd be happy.
Chloe?
I just am extremely surprised. Not with who made it to the top 4, but basically how it was ranked. I, along with many other people, I think all across America, went in Friday thinking that Georgia would be number 1, Cincinnati would be number 2, Michigan would be number 3, and Notre Dame would be number 4. I thought that Alabama was going to be out of the playoffs, and I was going to be so happy, but that didn't happen. And Alabama is ranked number 1 yet again. I could have not pictured a scenario where Alabama have beat Georgia, and now that has happened. Except now that I have seen the 2 play, I think Georgia doesn't deserve all the hype that we were giving them. And I realize that now because this is the first prolific offense they have seen. The other ranked team they played was Clemson, and they beat them. But as we know, Clemson isn't playing as well this season as they had in the past. So honestly, kind of showed me Georgia wasn't this elite team that we thought it was.
Yeah, and like you both have said now, that does make it hurt a little bit worse for Notre Dame, I think, right? Like these fans are sitting there thinking like of any year that not just like making it to the playoff, but winning the playoff was possible. It seemed like it was this year because like you said, Georgia, looked to be that powerhouse team and then got knocked off by Alabama, and Michigan now is sitting at number 2, and Cincinnati, a team that Notre Dame, if it had played better, could have beat, and if they met again, probably could beat the second time. So I do think you have a little bit of that, like what could have been feeling. That Notre Dame came so close to making it into the playoff for the first time that they actually would have had a feasible chance to win. I don't think that was the case when you looked at either of the other 2 in the last 3 years. I think both of those times you kind of knew going in if Notre Dame was going to win, it was going to be this huge upset. It didn't really feel like that this year. So I think there's a lot of that feeling of what could have been and the what-if scenarios are playing out there. But when you look at this game, what needs to happen in the Fiesta Bowl to consider it a successful start to the Freeman era, Kelly?
I think we definitely just need a dominating win. I think this game is very winnable, and it can be a great start to the Freeman era, especially if we come out really, really strong. We have a lot of time to prepare, and like I said, I think it's very feasible. I don't think it can just be any slight win, though. I think we really need to come out strong and it to be pretty dominating over Oklahoma.
I think that the Fiesta Bowl is going to be extremely important for Marcus Freeman because this is the beginning of the Marcus Freeman era, and he's going to set a precedent to what this era is going to look like. Is this going to be a winning era? Is this going to be a losing era? Is this going to be an average Notre Dame team era? I think it's going to be extremely important to solidify this during the Fiesta Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brian Kelly during his tenure never won a New Year's 6 bowl. So Marcus Freeman has a chance to do something now here in a couple of weeks that Brian Kelly never had the chance to do. And I think, you talk about like a statement win, and that certainly would be one, right? Like, you can't control your own fate in terms of getting in the playoff. You can control what happens against Oklahoma State on January 1st. And it'll be a true measure of how much Marcus Freeman clearly has won this team over in the locker room. He has their support there. Now it needs to translate to the field. And I don't think there will be any problem with that, but this is the first time that Marcus Freeman will be leading a team into a game. And I think there are questions to be answered about Reese and his play calling as well, because, Reese has now only been an offensive coordinator under an offensive-minded coach in Brian Kelly, and now he's being handed the reins as Marcus Freeman is obviously like the defensive-minded coach. So there are so many changes that are happening here, and I do think all of them will go well. It just is a matter of kind of those small technicalities that could be the difference between beating an Oklahoma State team and getting that first New Year's Six win in the last couple of years and not being able to do that. So as we transition, though, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because when we looked at you talked about the beginning of the season, and you talked about if you had told me Notre Dame would be 11-1 and in the Fiesta Bowl, I think everyone would have taken that. And I think if you had looked at the first half or the second half of the Toledo game, when it looks like Notre Dame is going to lose to Toledo at home to open the season here at home, I would have taken an 11-1 finish in the Fiesta Bowl in a heartbeat, and I never would have thought it was possible. And yet, here we are with a Notre Dame team that we felt like had a better chance to win a national title than some of these other teams that I think talent-wise at the beginning of the year and throughout the year were oftentimes better. But there's been so much done here. How much of that do you still attribute to Brian Kelly, and how much of that do you attribute to Freeman and Reese, Chloe?
I mean, we all are very upset here in Notre Dame because Brian Kelly, as you guys know, kind of left the team in a weak position going into what potentially could have been a college football playoff appearance by Notre Dame. But I have to give a lot of credit to Brian Kelly. He has brought this team, he's the most winningest coach of all time at Notre Dame, and he has brought this team back into the spotlight. So I do want to give some credit to Brian Kelly out here. But now we're looking straight to Freeman. Let's see what Freeman has to do. And Tommy Reese, I actually am a big fan of Tommy Reese. I think he has done a great job of understanding Jack Cohn and understanding him as a quarterback. The beginning of the season was a little rough, but now it kind of seems like he's got the play calling what Cohn needs it to be, which is perfect, quick, and easy passes, and to pound the run game.
Yeah. And I think another interesting thing is this ushers in this new era of Notre Dame football that we've talked so much about in the last week. And you look at the combined ages of Reese and Freeman, right? And they're 64 years old combined. Brian Kelly was 60 years old now, when he left after this year. So it really is ushering this new era. Jack Swarbrick tweeted for, I think, the first time ever, or at least the first time ever that anyone could see. And there's been so many new changes, and really it is just bringing that kind of new, fresh mentality to Notre Dame football that I do think will translate well. And I think as far as recruiting goes, clearly Freeman has been very successful on that front in general, and I think he'll be even more successful on that front. He said today he wants to be the leading recruit, in every conversation with the recruits that he's having. So I think there are so many new changes coming here, and it makes me really excited to see what happens. It also makes me a little sad as a senior that I won't be here on campus to see all of those changes happen, but I'm excited for your guys' senior year, which does open the season in Columbus at Ohio State, which is Marcus Freeman's alma mater. So lots of things to look forward to in the future as we look to this new era of Notre Dame football. But more short term, we are going to talk about Oklahoma State, and we're not going to go in depth on Oklahoma State. There's plenty of time to talk about that. We're going to talk more about, this is an interesting matchup for Tommy Reese, right? Because it's a very strong defense that he's going to be facing on January 1st. What do you need to see from him in this first test with his more control, I guess, that he as an offensive coordinator? What do you want to see from him on January 1st to see if this is going to be that same measuring stick that we talked about with Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I trust Tommy Reese now, and that he's going to give the offense the right plays they need in order to win. I think it's about now getting in there aggressively at the start. Once we push through Oklahoma State's defense and find the gaps, I think we'll be golden. We just have to get there. I think if we wait a long time to get our touchdowns and to make our scoring runs, then it could be tough. But I think if we get out there with a lot of pressure and a lot of aggressive play calls, I think that it'll be a good game for us.
Chloe, Kelly, what are your thoughts on Oklahoma State?
I definitely agree with that. I mean, Chloe pointed it out. Tommy Reese even pointed it out himself. Oklahoma's defense is not one to mess with, but I think our offense can definitely take it. I think Tommy Reese has made the changes that he needed to make over the course of the season, and I don't think he's coming into this too confident, but he recognizes their strengths, but he also recognizes our own. And I think that's important, but I also think we have the ability to take down their defense, and I think our offense is going to pull it off.
Yeah, and you mentioned what Tommy Rees has done throughout the season, which is clearly you had a three-quarterback situation, with Jack Cohn, Drew Pine, and Tyler Buckner, and each one of them has been responsible for winning a game at some point in the season. He kind of found what worked between all of them, and at the end of the season that ended up being Jack Cohn as a starter with some Tyler Buckner snaps sprinkled in. But there really is a lot to be said about how he handled all that, and I do think, Chloe, to your earlier point, that a lot of that is the fact that he played in this program and he didn't play in this program that long ago, and having navigated a quarterback controversy when he was here as a quarterback probably better equipped him to handle the same thing. He's talked so much about that culture in the quarterback room. So many bright things, I do think, on the horizon for Notre Dame football here. I want to get to score predictions in a minute here, but I also just want to hear, you guys might both be at this game. What do you think from this Notre Dame contingent? You've seen so much of the enthusiasm. Do you think that's going to start in the Fiesta Bowl? Do you think more people are going to go to the Fiesta Bowl than if Notre Dame, led by Brian Kelly, was in the Fiesta Bowl? I guess I just want to hear your thoughts on, you've been here on campus all week. People are so excited about Marcus Freeman. How do you think that translates to the crowd that we see on January 1st at the Fiesta Bowl? Kelly?
I mean, I'm super confident in this team and in this fan base and in Freeman's connection with the players, the fans, Notre Dame as a whole. I mean, all people are talking about on campus right now is how much they love Freeman, how much they love his family, his dedication to Notre Dame, and I really think that's going to push through in this Fiesta Bowl. I'm not going to count on everyone going out to Phoenix for the game, but I think everyone's support is going to be shown in any other way possible. Like I said, I think if we were in playoffs right now, it would be crazy the amount of passion and support that people would have because of Freeman, and I don't think that's going to change just because we're in the Fiesta Bowl, not the playoffs.
Yeah, going off of that, I have seen so much on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram saying even if you're not a college football fan, you want Notre Dame to make it to the college football playoffs, and you want them to win the national championship just to make the craziest sports story ever. Think about that. Brian Kelly moving to LSU right before they could potentially make the college football playoffs would be a crazy thing if Marcus Freeman gets to be the head coach and then wins. I think that although that's not the story we're going to receive, I think the Fiesta Bowl will still be very fun, and I think a lot of Notre Dame fans and college football fans in general will root for Notre Dame during this game just because of what happened with Brian Kelly and with Freeman's first game coming up.
Yeah, and Kelly, I want to circle back. You talked about the excitement on campus, and I think when I think about this, I don't think I've seen such an excited campus since the Clemson win. And I can't think of another time even before that, with the exception of the Michigan win. The first game of my freshman year was that 2018 win over Michigan, which was a very exciting, similar, started off the season on such a strong note, beat Michigan at home, big matchup, a lot of excitement there. But even that wasn't close to measuring up to the Clemson game. And I don't think that we've had another moment, with the exception of those two, in my time at Notre Dame, that the campus has been so excited and there's been such a buzz about a certain thing with Notre Dame football. Can you think of another time that the campus has been so excited about something with Notre Dame football aside from the Clemson win and this week?
I definitely cannot. I mean, all I can think about is the Clemson win. I know we've talked about this before, one of the best days of our lives in the TV room. But yeah, I definitely can't. And I really think that the start of the Freeman era will be that new thing, that new buzz that gets everyone going about Notre Dame football.
Going off of that, I actually, even though I was a senior in high school, I was actually at that Michigan game, and that game is what really got me wanting to come to Notre Dame. So that game definitely has a special little place in my heart, but also the Clemson game is one of the craziest games that I think any of us will ever be at. I mean, storming the field is just a crazy experience, and I'm so glad I got to experience that in my 4 years here. So
yeah. Absolutely, and it was really crazy. I think at the end of this season, I'd kind of thought those are the two moments. That Michigan game was so exciting. There were others, of course, but that Michigan game and then that Clemson double overtime win were two of the memories that stood out in terms of just the energy on the campus, about Notre Dame football after those two wins. And then this whole thing happened, and I thought this is the lowest low that I've seen in my time as a student at Notre Dame when it comes to Notre Dame football. And then suddenly we went from that to one of the highest highs that I'd seen in the course of a week. So really talk about a whirlwind week on campus. It truly was. And it was, I think someone had said this, maybe in NDTV, that it was one of the only times you could walk by in Duncan and everyone was talking about the same thing. And it really just goes to show, how big of a deal this was to this campus and to the students here. And now I think the excitement about Marcus Freeman is unprecedented in my time here and in the years before. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, but it does make me excited about the Notre Dame football era to come. So the Freeman era kicked off today. Marcus Freeman has introductory press conference today. So much excitement. Brady Quinn was in for that. Notre Dame players were made available for that. So much excitement in the program and around the community in Notre Dame. So with that, we will get to score predictions, and I want to start with you, Chloe, and hear your score predictions for Notre Dame and Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl on January 1st.
Okay, so I am hammering Notre Dame in this. I think it's going to be a 24-14 win over Oklahoma State. As I said before, I think it's very important to us to get out there aggressively just from the start, and I think as long as we play to our strengths, this should be a pretty feasible win for us.
Kelly?
This may not be the first time I've said this, but I say Notre Dame by 1,000,000. I genuinely think that we need to, and we will dominate this game. We haven't been successful in New Year's Six Bowls in recent years, but I think this Fiesta Bowl will really give us an opportunity to close those gaps. Freeman talked about having a motivated team and a motivated coaching staff, and I think that's really what we have on our hands. And I think with both of those and a motivated fan base, I think that's all we need to really dominate this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll get to my score prediction too, which is I think 31-10. I think Notre Dame will win this one pretty dominantly. There is a bit of a question there with Tommy Rees's offense against this Oklahoma State defense, but I do think they'll find their identity, and I think this whole team will be able to come together. I did also just realize I forgot to ask one of our most important questions, which is the highlight of the 2021 season. So neither of you corrected me here, but we need to get to our highlights. So Chloe, do you have one in mind?
I do. I think that the Navy game was my favorite games of the season. I think the night games are always so much fun here, so that was definitely a highlight. But also I love the relationship Navy and Notre Dame have. There's so much respect for each other, and there's always a few great ceremonies and the flyovers that happen. I really love the atmosphere for that game. Plus, it was a Notre Dame win, which I love. Also, I went to Chicago for the Shamrock series where Wisconsin and Notre Dame played. I thought that was super fun because it was crazy having both student sections there, and that was a kind of a weird thing. Wisconsin was at one end zone, while Notre Dame was the other. So just looking at the Wisconsin kids was just so much fun, and of course another win for Notre Dame.
Yeah, probably fun when Notre Dame won that one 41-13 too, and looking, that fourth quarter was crazy, and seeing, it was pretty equal throughout that whole game, right?
Yeah.
And the crowd reactions were pretty equal. And then that fourth quarter, I think the Wisconsin section got a little quieter. People started to leave. Yeah, Kelly, what was your highlight?
I had so many highlights from this season. When I look back at this season, I was kind of questioning really what I loved about it, and then I started writing out highlights, and I was like, wow, this was a really great season. I actually have my top 3. So as a fan, I definitely agree with Chloe, and I think that Wisconsin game at Soldier Field was crazy, great experience if people went to that. But the Tyree kickoff return versus Wisconsin was crazy to see. And then my second favorite was Myron's touchdown against Georgia Tech. I mean, just seeing the seniors play in that game and really pop off was really cool to watch. 55-0, that's a game that is really going to stick with me. And then last was Kyron's 90-yard run versus UNC. That was amazing to see as well.
Yeah, so many good highlights. It's Notre Dame had 11 wins in the regular season, and you just took a lot of the highlights before it got to me. So thank you both. But mine would be, and this is biased because I'm a senior, but mine was also Georgia Tech just in general. I think that game, I was saying after, I think there are 2 perfect senior days, and I think one is that game because it was a Notre Dame dominant performance. So many touchdown push-ups for all the students in the stand. I was working on the field during that game, and it was so fun to just look up and see the environment. And it was score after score, and it was just so much fun to see my 4 years kind of just end on that note of just a dominant Notre Dame performance. The other perfect senior day was last year's, which was the Clemson 47-40 double overtime win, which is kind of on the other end of that, the other perfect senior day you could have. So congratulations to the class of 2021 and 2022 for 2 of the best senior days that I think anyone could possibly dream up. And the class of 2023 has a lot to live up to next year. So hopefully they can meet that standard. But yeah, I think my season highlight would be just the whole Georgia Tech game and just really getting to reflect on my 4 years in a pretty low stress game for me. There was not a lot of worrying about the score in that one, and instead just getting to enjoy the environment at Notre Dame Stadium for one more time as a student. Any final thoughts before we part from Shamrock Sports here for the last time this semester?
So sad. I mean, I know this is Caroline's last show with Shamrock, and I just have to say that I'm so sad about it, but I'm so happy to see what she goes on to do.
Yes, I agree. I will miss Caroline very much, and I'm so excited that we got to squeeze in the all-woman show.
Yes.
Here, all 3 of us are so excited, and we've been waiting for this for a while, so we're really happy about this. And also, go Irish.
Yeah, and go Irish. Yeah, this has been on the schedule for a long time. It is crazy that Ellen Geyer and I never did an all-women's show, the two of us. But maybe it was because we were saving it for this one. And Ellen Guy are one of the other women who paved the way here at Shamrock Sports. And there are so many great women now on our staff and involved with NDTV, and very thankful for all of them. And Kelly will be going abroad in the spring, so she will not be here on our winter and spring sports show in the spring, but you can see me and Chloe will be here all spring, along with the rest of the NDTV crew. So from Shamrock Sports in the second floor of the Duncan Student Center, we're signing off on Shamrock Sports.